Blackstone presents Collected Verse of Lewis Esson. This book is read by Denis Daly. Introduction. Thomas Lewis Buvalo Esson is best remembered today as a dramatist, in particular for his perceptive shaving political comedy The Time Is Not Yet Ripe, which was first produced in Melbourne in 1912. However, he was also active as a journalist and poet, and in the latter role was a significant figure in the development of Australian verse, from the humble bush ballad to more adventurous and personalised forms of poetic expression. Esson was born in Scotland in 1878, but moved as a young child to Melbourne. He attended the University of Melbourne between 1896 and 1901, but left without graduating. After a European trip in 1904, he returned to Melbourne and began pursuing a literary career in earnest. His first collection of poems, Bells and Bees, was published in 1910, and a second collection, Red Gums and Other Verses, followed in 1912. Although Esson published no further poetry collections, his verse continued to appear in magazines such as the Bulletin until the late 1920s. After suffering several years of ill health, Lewis Esson died in Sydney in 1943. Esson may be described as a journalist who wrote poetry, rather than as a mainstream poet in his own right. Included in his verse are not only bush ballads, such as Whalin up the Lachlan, but also somber meditations such as the Travail of Nature, monologues like Silenus the Young Satyr, and thundering panegyrics like the Bazaar of Death. As a rule, Esson's poems are quite short, and despite occasional infelicities, display a tidy and accurate use of verbiage. Most of the poems in Bells and Bees are poetic portraits in which the poet strives to probe the deeper meanings of classic icons of cultural expression. The shearer's lonely wife, the Afghan camel driver, and the Greek legendary figure Silenus are all presented not merely as exotic personages, but rather as individual expressions of a widely variegated humanity. The final poem, Brogan's Lane, stands out as a piece of social commentary, a depiction of a disaffected corner of urban society where all the characters are tainted with a common sense of helpless misery. In Red Gums and Other Verses, Esson was a little more adventurous. Not only are many of the poems longer than those of the previous collection, but Esson also includes narrative in several verses. He also
Sample complete. Ready to continue?